We have a very special guest alert because the director is coming on today's show to talk about his favorite picks from the draft, including why he's probably the number one Omarion Hampton fan and why he thinks the Chargers could be contenders in 2025.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but it's our 7th year as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. If you want to make sure you never miss the show, like today's with a giant guest like the director on it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. And we have a banger in store for you guys today because we get into all of the draft stuff with the director, who obviously loves Omarion Hampton, but there are a couple other picks I think he likes more than other people too, so you're going to want to hear that. And then also just, hey, what will the Chargers do in 2025 now that we see what this roster really is? He is very excited and thinks they will be contenders. But today's episode with this special guest is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, guys, well, today's guest needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyways. We have the one, the only, the director, one of the best Chargers content makers, period. One of the best NFL content makers, period. But he is at the director_YT on Twitter. You can also find him on the Director Chargers YouTube channel, and he's also a host for Bleacher Report, a recurring guest. It's a great time every year when we get to do this show, and we're always excited for it because the director speaks for himself, and we're so glad to have you on today, man.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always weird hearing the laundry list of like the director, this, that. I literally am just like, I feel like just some dude that won't shut up about the Chargers. And for some reason, people keep showing up to listen to me babble about them. Thank you guys for having me on another platform to spread the good word of how well the Chargers in the second year and Jim Harbaugh is going to look in 2025.
The Book of Harbaugh, as they call it. But I mean, there is definitely some excitement around this team as we see them transform into a Jim Harbaugh team. And we knew it would happen. We never knew what the timeline would be, but it does look a lot more like that, I think, in year 2 of Jim Harbaugh. And if anyone saw your reaction to the Omarion Hampton pick, they know that you are stoked about it. And we're going to get to him. But I want to start with maybe a take I don't know from you yet, which is, hey, there's several very good selections in the draft. I know you love the Hampton pick, but if you were picking your favorite pick outside of the first round in the 2025 draft class, who would you go with?
Oh, man, it's going to be weird, okay, because I don't know if I've heard very many people talking about him, man. But Mickens, dude, in the 6th round, right? That. Yeah, like, dude, like that's a guy that I had been following because every time at the end of those PFF mock drafts, like, this Mickens guy's still here. The safety position fell again. Let's look into this fella. And I fell more in love with the pick the more I started to realize how important the safety position, more specifically the depth at safety, is to the Chargers defense. How many guys would go out and get last season? We got Eddie Jackson and Terrell Edmonds, and of course
Marcus May,
and of course we got Elijah Molden in there too. It's like it seems like a revolving door of like, hey, we got guys, we got to get guys in here, we got to make sure that safety position is locked down. And if you look into who he is, his physicality, his speed, I think he ran on the 4.4. He's a really good coverage, safety as well. He plays everywhere. And considering how much the Chargers lean on that position in Jesse Minter's system, I think that's an underrated pick. And I honestly think he's going to see more playing time in his rookie season than a lot of us are prepared for.
Yeah, and also a guy who really loves special teams and said it in the draft process and after, so we know that he's going to be a key contributor on that. But without further ado, of course, we got to get into your favorite pick, Omarion Hampton. We liked the Omarion Hampton pick, but I don't think anyone was as excited as you were when that pick was announced. You had predicted the pick on Bleacher Report before the draft, which was a great call. But what is it about Hampton that made you believe he is such a great fit for the Chargers?
Man, I couldn't believe it when we selected him. It's one of those situations where it's like you want it to happen so bad, but there's this logical, like, good angel, bad devil telling you, like, hey, man, like, this is you can get your hopes up, but I don't know if it's going to happen. It's a cool pick, but in reality, this is what you're going to be looking at. when it finally happened, I definitely lost my mind because I had been preaching, at least on my platform, for the last several months, even when we got Najee Harris, just how important it was for the Chargers to get a nice slice of the pie of this running back class. It's a special class, right? And I think a lot of people, when you say it's a special class at running back, you think, oh, depth. Yeah, we can get a guy in the late rounds. We can get a guy in the third, the fourth. He's going to be a contributor, which is fair. You're going to see a lot of running backs out of this class define the position for the next 3 or 4 years. But to get the cream of the crop, to get that guy that at the very top, of what was such a deep draft, a running back, I think that is identity shifting for this team. And that's why, I kept pounding the table. Even when we got Najee, I got a lot of pushback after we got Najee. I was like, no, man, if you want to be that rough, that tough, that physical run football team, you need a radical change in that direction. And a first-round running back, even though on the surface may seem a little excessive, is a radical change running towards that identity. And he's going to be a beast on this team, dude. You're going to start thinking Chargers offense. It's going to be Justin Herbert, Omarion Hampton, and, of course, Ladd McConkey and company. But he's going to be a big part of this team going forward.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to see how it pans out, just because they brought in Najee Harris. What is that role going to look like early on? Is it going to be Najee, who's kind of that guy as they ease Omarion Hampton into it, or is it just going to be Omarion Hampton's talent is just way too much to keep him off the field, and then maybe he's taking the major lion's share of those carries and touches early on in the season?
I like to adhere it to what the Detroit Lions have built over the last couple of seasons. They have 2 very good running backs. They invested a first-round pick in Jahmyr Gibbs. A lot of people feeling like it was a reach. And how did that turn out for them? I think pretty good. Everyone's scared of the Lions run game, and the Chargers are next in line for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as far as the similarities between him and Najee Harris, like obviously they bring some of the same things to the table. And I think the nice thing is both of them bring physicality, which is good, but they're not the same player, right? He does bring Omarion Hampton that is more of that kind of home run ability, that 4.4 speed. And I mean, even though it's probably slept on, that I think Najee Harris is like 3rd in 20+ yard rushes over the last couple of seasons. So it's not like he can't break chunks either. He may be just not having those house calls, but it is going to be a dual-headed battering ram for the Chargers in that backfield. We talked yesterday about them potentially trying to play more bully ball. Those are 2 guys, if you're talking about bully ball, you would think would be on the cover of that picture. But one of the things that set Joe Hortiz's draft class apart last season was the ability to find value on day 3, and we saw it with Cam Hart, right? We also saw it with Tarheeb Still. The Chargers had another 2 fifth-round picks this season with Keandre Lambert-Smith, which I think took many of us by surprise, but also a Ronde Gadsden II. Back-to-back weapons, something we'll talk about later, just a theme to this draft class. But was there any, I know you talked about RJ Mickens, but out of those other guys, is there someone there where you think, okay, hey, this is the guy that we might be thinking kind of midway into the season, toward the end of the season, man, how did this guy land in round 5? And also, how did Joe Hortiz do it again?
Is it 5th round going to be that sweet spot for Ortiz and the Chargers? Over the we're all like lean forward in our seats, round 5. Like, okay, man, here comes the next guy.
Right.
Ronde Gadsden, man, is one that gets me extremely excited. You know what? To be fair, that's one that my chat, my audience, they were pushing on me, like, hey, Director, you got to take a look at this guy. I was so enamored by Gunnar Helm and my guy Harold Fannin. Curse the Browns for reaching for him.
Mine
too. I love Harold Fannin, dude. But they kept saying, hey, man, if it's late, Ronde Gadsden, you got to look into this guy. When we drafted him, shout out to Dan Wolkenstein. He gave me a call. He live on my live stream. He explained to everybody why he was his guy. He was super excited. He broke down why he's going to be such a nice dart throw, we're going to say, for the offense going forward, because, man, he's that big wide receiver type, running at the tight end position. You're going to line him up in the slot. He took, I think it was the 1st or 2nd most snaps from the slot in college ball last season, which is very impressive. His receiving yards, his range, his contested, everything about him that, from the receiver perspective of tight end, looks like it could be a really good bet. And that's one of the aspects from the position we've not really seen with Justin Herbert. And it gets me giddy to think that finally we got that, over the middle target, the seam killer in Ronde Gadsden that could finally bring that element and really, utilize that part of Justin Herbert's game, which we know he loves, so
he absolutely does. And with the Ronde Gadsden, we know also, like, you can see, being a former wide receiver, how he moves and how he's able to snatch the ball out of the air. And also feel like he's a pretty underrated blocker as well for a guy who transitioned to tight end kind of late in his career. But
we have more great stuff with the director coming up, including the Chargers strategy on just adding as many weapons around Justin Herbert as possible, and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, because there's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game or an NHL playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. And this is the time of year in those sports you want to be there, because the atmosphere of these games in the playoffs, especially in the second round for most of these series, man, it's electric, and you can always find a ticket with Game Time. One of the things I love about it is Game Time makes it so easy to get playoff tickets, but also prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Right now, you can go on Game Time and find a seat and know exactly what your view from this seat is going to be, and also exactly what it's going to cost, because you can toggle all into pricing, so there's no surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
But like we talked about, there was a clear theme to this draft, and it was to give Justin Herbert as many weapons as possible, using 4 of their top 6 picks on offensive skill players. Myself and Daniel have joked that they were determined to never see that the Texans box score again shows only Ladd McConkey and nobody else. What did you think about that strategy to load up on weapons for their quarterback?
I really think, like, when God gives you a sign, when you see something so obvious, you gotta run towards it, man. And that game defined what I'm gonna say this draft class was, because yes, Ladd McConkey is incredible. The 200 yards in that playoff game, like, it felt like, we have the next big guy at wide receiver, but man, do they need help.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the team needs completeness. It needs balance. It needs to be what they've envisioned behind, even Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. And that heavily involves a completeness in receiving options as well as running options. I really do think the talent we all of a sudden have at running back is going to make up for a lot of shortcomings that may occur in terms of the interior offensive line play, which, honestly, yeah, it may still need another year or so to get to that point where we're like, yeah, let's go O-line. But till then, both of these guys, Najee and Omarion, are individual talents to carry that. Then you see what that does for the passing and how it opens that up, the play action. You got all of a sudden Trey Harris going down the sideline with more, space, opening up space for Ladd McConkey. And then here's, the tight. I think Tyler Conklin's going to be an awesome weapon this year too. It really does push this team in a direction where the offense can keep up with what the defense was producing last year. You have the number 1 defense in football, man. You got to get that offense up to par. And if you can get it anywhere close to what the defense was producing last year, this is a very dangerous playoff, dare I say, Super Bowl contending form of Los Angeles Chargers. So, yeah, I'm very excited for what they did for the offense.
Yeah, there was a clear kind of message to Justin Herbert that, hey, we're not going to leave you out there with the weapons that we gave you last year. And I think that was such a clear thing by them. And also, speaking of Ronde Gadsden II, tight end room might quietly be one of the most improved rooms on this roster. And Will Dissly had a career season last year and wasn't too shabby until that playoff game. So super excited to see what that room brings. But you did bring something up there that I thought was interesting, specifically about the interior of the offensive line, because I was pretty surprised that they waited until the 6th round to address it. Obviously, there's been so much to this center saga, the starting center saga. Will it be Bradley Bozeman? Will it be Andre James? Will it be Zion Johnson? But it surprised me that they waited that long to take an offensive lineman. That being said, me and David both said going into it, you're going to go into this draft and you're going to come away with it feeling like there was a position that got left out. There was a specific focus on weapons, and I don't think anyone is leaving that draft saying the Chargers didn't get enough weapons. But something's going to get left out a little bit in that scenario. So how concerned would you say you are with the interior of the offensive line? Or kind of to your point what you were saying before, Do you think that potentially the Chargers running game being better, getting into less 3rd and 10+ situations, all of those more favorable situations and the ability to run the ball could cover those things up?
I think free agency took a bigger step than a lot of us realize in terms of interior offensive line, because last year was truly awful, very, very bad. Adding, Andre James is a good upgrade. Honestly, he's going to be a step in the right direction. It's not going to be one of the best centers in football, but he's a scheme fit. You have to imagine it's going to be a better outing than what Bradley Bozeman had last season. And that in itself is going to have a trickling effect to hopefully Zion Johnson. But you also have to remember, like, Mekhi Becton is such a big get for this offense. I mean, when it comes to free agency, there's some big guys that we sign. I think Mekhi might be up there with some of the best.
Literally,
this offseason. Yeah, definitely. He's an apartment building out there blocking.
My favorite signing for sure. Huge. I mean, it was huge.
And I think that
pounds on the right side now.
Yeah, it's atrocious. It's in a good way. And I think that's going to help make up for the fact that we didn't hit super hard in the draft. But more than anything, like we mentioned, the individual talent of the backs are going to push us in the direction of being a more dominant run football team. You give these same running backs, Najee and Omarion Hampton, the same line we had last year, I promise you, we are not as bad at running the football as we were last year. And last year was not terrible, but you amplify the talent at that skill position. I think we end up being one of the more dangerous running football teams in the NFL.
Well, and I think it just shows that they were paying attention. Last year when J.K. Dobbins was not on the football field, whoever was handling the football, outside of a couple of good runs from Gus Edwards, was just not at the level that they needed it to be. And so that I feel like adding a high quality runner to pair with Najee Harris and, hopefully eventually take over the mantle as the number one guy is a great strategy to have. Cause then, there really is no rest for the weary or the wicked. No matter who is on the football field, they are coming to punish you and try to finish football games, which I
think there's a good
Jim
shot
Harbaugh wants to do.
Yeah, I think there's a good shot that Najee even sticks around after this year with that role, the David Montgomery role, like we're talking in Detroit. So I'm very excited to see this relentless, 1-2 punch over the course of the season.
Yep. So switching things over to the defensive side here, after the losses of Poona Ford and Joey Bosa, we knew that the Chargers needed to add to that defensive front in the draft, and hopefully, they were able to find some guys that that can become starters down the road. They ended up addressing that in rounds 3 and 4. How did you feel about Jamari Caldwell and Kyle Kennard?
Oh, I think Kyle Kennard is an amazing value. Let me actually get back to him in a second, because I think Jamari Caldwell, a lot of people, myself included, maybe swept him under the rug a little bit because of how big a value we got at other positions in other rounds. And Caldwell, technically for a lot of people on their big boards, the consensus big boards, maybe a little bit of a reach for some people, but it doesn't mean that it was a bad pick, because we don't know what the Chargers board looked like. They had an agenda, they best player available. You can really feel that, live in the first couple rounds and even some of the later rounds. But this pick did feel a little bit more of a need, but still a really good player. And it's a pretty important piece of the defense. Like we were talking about, with the safeties, the Minter defense really feels like it leans really heavy on safety, edge, interior defensive line is going to be a big one too. And Jamari Caldwell brings a lot to the table that Poona Ford was bringing in terms of size, in terms of that, presence in the middle of the line. But it is a little bit more of what are we going to get in terms of production right now with him, and then like the 2 or 3 other nose tackles that we signed as well. A little bit more up in the air, but I have a lot of faith that Jamari Caldwell is going to be at least a very consistent threat, versus the run. I think he's going to do very well there. His size, I think, just demands respect.
Yeah,
at the middle of the line is going to be produced. Now, Kyle Kennard, man, this cat, I'm very excited to see what his potential could end up being in the future, because at very minimum, his floor to me is edge 3. He's going to have a very comfortable life at edge 3 for the Chargers in his NFL career, but the ceiling is very real for him too. SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He produced 10 or 11 sacks?
11 and a half
sacks last season. I really do believe that his ceiling, opposite Tuli Tuipulotu as a legitimate edge 2, does exist, but there's no pressure to make that happen right away. He can be that guy learning behind Khalil Mack and rotating in with Bud Dupree and Tuli, and be it, let's be honest, a 3 or 4 sack guy in his rookie season, that'll be just fine. That'd be great. Next season, when he's had, a year in the Jesse Minter system, a year with Khalil Mack, and then you bring in the potential of his individual talent, how he produced in the SEC. His ceiling is very exciting to me. So Kyle Kennard, great value, nice tall ceiling. Jamari Caldwell, I think he's got a nice floor. We'll see how high his ceiling gets when he gets his hands on him.
And the thing is, too, is like it's going to be hard to sell the fan base on a guy who had 0 sacks last year in the case of Jamari Caldwell. But it's easy to forget, 6.5 he had the year before that. And I liked what Joe Ortiz had to say about him. Like, hey, when he was asked to rush the passer a lot, he rushed the passer and he produced there. When he was asked to be a 2-gap run stuffing guy, he did that last year for Oregon, but also had a career high in pressure. So I really like both of those picks. Kyle Kennard, I feel like the other thing me and David have talked about too, just brings a little bit of a different element to that group that Tuli Tuipulotu and Khalil Mack aren't known for, right? Like a little bit more burst, a little bit more juice off the edge to at the very least, get the corner, threaten with speed, have the quarterback have to step up in the pocket and maybe open things up for other guys. But we still have more to get into with the director, including how good they could be and if this is a playoff roster this season, and his thoughts on Jim Harbaugh saying he needs to get Justin Herbert into the Hall of Fame, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time, and with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who has the results that he's already delivered incredibly. And also, posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, you can get multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Guys, but let's talk about more kind of this offseason as a whole now, because I would never put it past Joe Ortiz to continue adding to the roster. But for the most part, we have an idea. We have the vision of what this roster is going to be right now. And I think the roster was better last year than we saw the year before that. But once it got to the playoffs, once they went against good teams, there was a clear kind of separation of talent, whether it's the Ravens, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what happened in that playoff game. Now that we see where this roster is at in year 2 of this regime, more building it in the Jim Harbaugh kind of philosophy, do you think the Chargers have the roster now to actually compete and win in the playoffs?
Yes. And, honestly, I think that the schedule this year, too, is really, built to help the Chargers be ready for that moment when it comes at the end of the season. This year, 11 wins, which is a really good, prediction for the Bolts, is different than the 11 wins last season. Last season, the schedule maybe a bit softer. The Chargers were able to establish themselves, luckily, through some softer, matchups.
Sure.
This year is not going to be the case. This year is a bit of a tougher schedule for the Chargers, especially at home. But I think that trial by fire is important for this team. They built towards what they want to be with Jim Harbaugh and company, and now they get to put it to the test versus some pretty decent competition. By the end of it, I do think we're going to see a Chargers football team ready to take on the best of the best and prove that, hey, year 2 of Jim Harbaugh, which has historically been pretty dangerous, here come the Chargers next in line, with that mantra. So, yeah, I definitely think that the Chargers are a playoff caliber team and a very dangerous playoff caliber team now that they really are built to what they want to do.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think obviously with Jim Harbaugh saying, hey, offensive linemen are weapons, that, there's kind of a stereotype out there that himself and Greg Roman kind of hate wide receivers. Yet the Chargers have now drafted 5 wide receivers in the first 2 years of the regime. So going into the season last year, almost everyone agreed that they had one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the NFL. Do you think with the new additions, we could be thinking of this group as maybe around a top 10 unit after the season?
A top 10 unit in offense?
No, wide receivers.
Wide receivers. Yeah. I think that's definitely fair because Ladd McConkey individually is going to boost that. His breakout last season as the best Chargers rookie wide receiver in franchise history is nothing to be ignored. Like, that is insane. Then you add to the talent Trey Harris, who I think, guys, come on. Last year, the Chargers were the Brian Thomas knowers, right? Like they knew before everybody. How are we going to not say that applies to the second round, too? They went up and got Ladd McConkey. They know wide receiver. They're scouts. They're all over it. And Trey Harris, outside of what was the second round, it was Jaden Higgins and it was Luther Burden, right? The top of the top in that second wave, in my opinion, probably was Trey Harris. And his skill set added to and complementing Ladd McConkey, I think it's going to have a pretty big impact on how Ladd McConkey's season goes. And Ladd McConkey could easily go for 1,300 yards, maybe double-digit touchdowns with the supporting cast he has now in receivers and the run game. And shout out to Keandre Lambert-Smith as well. That dude has a ridiculous grade versus what is it, in the deep part of the field or something like that, somewhere in the 90s, 98, I do believe as well, which is pretty insane. Trey Harris, the man coverage destroyer, is definitely going to demand respect from the defense. So all in all, I think the Chargers being a top 10 passing offense or top 10 wide receiver offense is definitely fair. I would probably put them in and around that 9 or 10, especially because they have Justin Herbert at quarterback. That carries them very far as well. But I don't even think they need to be a top 10 wide receiver team at this point. I mean, guys, the run game, dude.
Yeah.
I am so excited to see how that impacts how the Chargers attack on offense. I think you're going to see a healthy dose of it. So if the wide receivers can edge in a top 9, top 10, I think all the better.
Yeah, I think if you would have told me, before, right when Jim Harbaugh signed, they were going to draft 2 offensive linemen and 5 wide receivers in the first 2 years, I probably would have had a hard time believing that. But I do think
add
that
one more thing to that,
yeah,
though.
Please.
I think this is so important. It's something that I feel is going to be a hugely present part of the Chargers offense in terms of receiving. Watch out for Omarion Hampton to completely blow expectations out of the water in terms of his receiving from the running back position. We know Justin Herbert loves to check down to running back. The Austin Eckler era thrived behind that idea, and Omarion Hampton sneakily one of the best receiving backs in this class, maybe now in the NFL, and Justin Herbert's going to utilize him. The kind of freakish yards he's going to get when he's out in space. Watch out. I think Omarion Hampton sneakily is going to sneak in there as one of those premium receiving options for Justin Herbert as well.
And I'd say that's probably one of the more underutilized parts of the Chargers offense last season, right? They didn't really have a true threat as far as a running back out of the backfield. Najee Harris is kind of underrated in that regard as well. But I think that it's such a good point, and I think that hopefully we see that used a little more because it was so deadly. And I mean, it bailed them out so many times, and Austin Eckler could take that, drop off kind of pass and just take it, make a guy miss, get a first down, and keep the chains moving. But let's get you out on this. Jim Harbaugh made waves last week when he said one thing that really, really got the NFL world buzzing, and that was he woke up in the middle of the night and he said to himself, my mission is to get Justin Herbert to the Hall of Fame. Obviously, Herbert's last game was awful, but you've watched every snap of his career like us. You know what he can do. We all know what he's capable of doing. But what was your reaction when you hear Jim Harbaugh saying something that really we never hear a coach say, like to put those expectations on your quarterback, to just be willing to say the quiet part out loud? I mean, I wanted to know what your reaction was to that.
My instant reaction, obviously, it's Coach Harbaugh. Good old Coach Harbaugh, man. I love those. Like, one day I'm going to get a wall of Harbaughisms. Get flood the walls with the wisdom of Coach Harbaugh. But when he said that, man, I believed him. Coach Harbaugh is not messing around. I mean, like his methods may be mysterious, but then the way he gets to his ultimate goal. But this man attacks again every day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind, and that does produce results, as we've seen throughout his entire career. He's done so with so many quarterbacks, Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick and everybody throughout his career. He's been able to elevate, and I know that he knows he's capable of helping Justin Herbert get there because he believes Justin Herbert is that caliber of player, as we all do as Chargers fans. And when I see Justin Herbert, I see a Super Bowl winning quarterback. There's no doubt about it. Now he just needs the supporting cast and the script, the guideline of a staff that knows what they're doing to help him get there. I think at this point it's a matter of time. He needs playoff wins. Super Bowl would help a lot, but he's definitely a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, the Hall of Fame talent is so apparent. Like, it's just, he can do it, which I think makes it worse, right? And I do think that, in the fan base, when you see that, it's going to be hard to earn that trust back from the fans to once you get there. having faith that, hey, this is the right guy to do it. But if he wants to make the Hall of Fame with this current batch of quarterbacks and multi-time MVP winners like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, obviously Josh Allen coming off an MVP season, you're going to have the hardware to make the Hall of Fame. And Jim Harbaugh also, hey, what does that do for his legacy, right? He wins a Super Bowl with the Chargers after winning a national championship at Michigan.
Build the statue. That's what I got to say about that.
Buy multiple statues outside of multiple stadiums. But
mark my words, though. Mark my words. By season end, Justin Herbert is going to be a very hot topic when revolving around the league MVP conversation. The supporting cast that they added this season, with the success they had last year with a roster that was very incomplete, I think it's going to be a pretty dramatic jump.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest. Like, they didn't really open it up until, 7 weeks into the season, right? So, they kind of found their groove a little bit. Inconsistent, I think, because of the talent surrounding him. But they found out, hey, the best way for this to work is letting Justin Herbert do what he does best. And, I mean, that was really a lot of the second half of the season. And, I mean, we know he can do it. He had, of a couple of interceptions all year last season. So, he's a great quarterback. Jim Harbaugh believes in him. And, I mean, Jim Harbaugh is the type of coach that'll make you believe that Justin Herbert will be inducted into Canton one day and getting fitted for his gold jacket. And I think Jim Harbaugh wants to be right behind him in that line, getting his gold jacket as well. But
just
a gold jacket of Chargers content producing goes to the one and only, the director. Thank you so much for your time today, man. It's always so much fun. We really appreciate you giving us this time. I mean, you have your platform to say whatever you want all the time and just yell at Chargers, about the Chargers to everyone, your friends included, the people on the stream. But thank you for giving us the time again. If you guys, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine you guys don't know who the director is or where to find him, but you can find him at the director_YT on Twitter. He's the Director Chargers YouTube channel host and a host for Bleacher Report. Thank you so much for your time, man. It was so great catching up with you.
Always a pleasure yucking it up with true Chargers fandom, baby. Thanks for having me on.
And hey, pretty soon we'll have to get another Chargers content creation Avengers situation going, especially the Chargers are to win the
we're
big
overdue
dance for sure.
Yeah,
we're overdue.
Someone called Dan.
Dan Wolkenstein, you're on the clock. Another special thank you to the director, who's always awesome. And every time we have him on, I wonder why we waited so long to do it again. And I'm sure we'll try to get him on again soon. But thank you to the everydayers out there. We get shows like today's show because of the support from you guys. And you guys are always showing out for us. And we appreciate you. Thank you, as always, for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel. And listen wherever you get your podcast from. And make sure you have those notifications on, because one might say one day, hey, the director, Locked On Chargers crossover is now. Yeah, that's what you can get. So make sure you have that turned on. You can also find the show every day on all of our social media, which is important because tomorrow is Fan Mail Friday. So you can hit us up at Locked On LAC and get your questions there, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, on our Locked On Chargers YouTube page, and also on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page as well. We always get great questions from you guys and love hearing from you. And you can also call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers question there. But thank you guys so much for checking out today's show. Make sure you're back tomorrow for Fan Mail Friday. Until then, take it easy and go Bulls.